Okay, call to order the Planning and Development Committee meeting at 1 o'clock on August 24th at 1 o'clock. Already said that, right? So approval of the agenda, I'd like to add a late item, and I don't know if anybody else does, but I'd like to have a very short discussion about 1217 Young Crescent, which is between the Red Barn and the we call it the bridge. Is there anything else? No, all good. So recommendation that the Planning and Development Committee meeting agenda for August 24th, 2022 be approved as amended. Yes, 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 all in favor, yes, carried. Okay. Adoption of the minutes. Approval of the minutes, recommendation that the minutes of the Planning Development Committee meeting held on August 10th, 2022 adopted. Board, Brian, favor, yes, approved. Development services update, applications, current applications, Scott.
And so here's the list. It seems to be getting longer, but possibly after today, we should be able to take a couple of those off. A couple new files, and then yeah, kind of the usual ones that are still hanging on. But yeah, answer any questions that he has, Ernie?
I have a question. I know that we're looking for another building inspector. Have we actually secured one today? Like,
So right now we have Kenny Gyps under contract.
okay,
At the council meeting tonight, there's an agenda item where we would be contracting with the city of Revelstoke to provide them building. So, and right now we have a job ad, an internal job posting for a chief building inspector. So if all goes according to plan, we'd like to have a full-time chief building inspector hired by next 30th, I think. And then we would contract out to the city of Revelstoke Building Inspection Service.
perfect. Great. Any other questions? Comments on this? Go ahead, Gordon.
No, and Kenny's good with that. He's all excited about doing both.
He's agreed to it, but Revelstoke actually passed a resolution, their council. We do a contract, our council would need to agree to that contract. And he's indicated he's interested in the position, but until we go through that process, the name on the dotted line, I don't want to promise too much, but I think it looks pretty positive and he seems pretty excited about it. Really, I think it'll be a really good opportunity for him as well for his career. So
Yeah. And he lives here?
he lives.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. He was our intern one a while ago, right?
That's right.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, it's a very important thing to the town as from a buildings perspective. Having a building inspector that's full-time, that lives here, that's not going to change because there is a process where you need to get used to a building inspector as a builder, and the building inspector have to get used to the contractors and then but to make everything work, having a full-time and he's excellent building inspector. He's good to deal with, so I hope it can all work.
One other comment, at our last meeting in the notes, it was the chair requested that staff investigate the possibility of a conversation with the other property owners in the industrial park about a gateway entrance as opposed to replanting of trees and landscape. Have we made any effort in that front or not today?
We haven't made any effort on that front. Sarah has brought it up to me, and I told her I didn't have time for it, but back to it.
So would that be something, who in the department would be that allocation go to? You, just yourself or Sarah or Steffi or maybe the building inspector? Or-
Yeah, maybe Sarah and I can work on it together. She's keen to get it done. I just haven't.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay, new business. So 540 Thompson Court. That the Planning and Development Committee recommends council authorize and issue a development permit number 22-120 DP for the property legally described as Lot A, Section 1, Township 22, Range 8, west of the 6th Meridian Kamloops Division, Yale District Plan, EPP 112932, located at 540 Thompson Court to permit the development of an accessory building. Who's got this?
Yeah, it's me. So this is a development permit. It's in the industrial park, general industrial use. Zoned like industrial. This is where Walmart has developed the trailer facility. They've actually added another building. It's actually a CCAN. So as soon as the container is there and it's being used as a shed, it becomes a building. Building permits required, development permits required. They would like to use that to store supplies for trucks, mainly washer fluid, things like that. So the development permit that would be considered would have the conditions that it's in accordance with the site plan, and that's the site plan you see on the screen. The building will be white and may include a gray horizontal band in common with the office, and then rooftop mechanical will be screened from view.
Any comments? Go ahead, Gord.
Well, just that about the landscape, it's, you know, basically it's in here that they have to blend into the overall required landscape area. So yeah, if Sarah and you guys can look into that as soon as possible. And the other thing is just to, you know, I know they might part washer fluid in there, but if there's flammables in there, they should mark that container. So our fire department would be aware of it if it does catch on, or something catches on fire.
Any other comments? No? All right, draft application. Is the, oh, sorry. So on the recommendation, all those in favor? Carried. Sorry. So this is the short-term business license. Is this the draft that Colleen and Gord were working on together?
Right.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to review it? Okay, we'll start with Debra. You got any comments?
Yep, I think it's all good. It's very practical and common sense, and it's a sort of thing that we should be ensuring. Like when you guys, I think, know how I felt about the short-term rentals before. It was like we were kind of just overthinking. This is good.
Any other prize?
No, I don't have any comment.
One really picky little thing is I noticed that it's all natural gas appliances. We don't have natural gas, so it's okay, right? But
Yeah, but we may get.
well, we
Maybe.
are maybe natural gas.
Gas.
Okay, it's like I said, picky.
Gas, that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gas and.
Yeah,
that is picky, by the way.
it is picky.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to find something, right?
That's always. So there appears to be no map attached with this. Does this encompass the entire community then? Is that what it is?
Right, so this is this would be business license application, so the zoning that says where short-term rental can be permitted. This is really just for the business license aspect of it. So one thing that staff would look at or we're asking for is what is your zone? But this is really just for practical business side use.
Okay, George, you had your hand up, but
Yeah, just curious with all the problems we're having over at the Legacy with the parking there, and well, it's at the port side as well. They have inadequate parking for, I'm pretty sure it's short-term rentals. Owners are renting their places out while they leave their boats and their parking spots down in the parkade. So then the people are parking out on the street, and that's where everybody's having the problem with parking on the street. Wondering if, I mean, I know we do check the tick box for strata units, but should there be a special tick box or special wording for strata units parking because of the problem we're having? I'm just wondering about that.
So right now, when someone applies for a short-term rental, so Grandview Shores is an example where they actually, you can do them, they're zoned to do that, and the strata allows it. So we ask for something from the strata saying how many parking spots they have. And then, so if they say, yeah, here's our strata agreement, this shows us our parking spots, that means they can have 2 bedrooms. So you have to prove you have a parking spot for every bedroom.
Yeah.
And we do that. I think with the Legacy, I think it'll be kind of another tool, like the parking issue for the bylaw is one thing. But I think if then the new bylaw comes into place, we have this in place and someone hasn't applied for a business license and they're causing problems with strata, the strata can then say, hey, we have these people operating. So then we have this business license where we can enforce on them in addition to parking.
Really important because if you, I mean, I think they're all here to spend their money, so I don't really say much. But if the welding shop and the 2 lots become commercial businesses and they're relying on parking out in front there, it's just important to make sure that the stratas understand that they have 2, if they're renting their place out, they should have 2 spots per bedroom or whatever it is. Yeah.
And the strata should really police themselves because it affects them directly, like the other tenants in the building, so that the strata should have a, that should be big for them to make sure there's enough parking, because I think it should police itself a bit, and the district should put it onto them a little bit.
go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me, Chair. Just a point on Councillor Bush was talking about parking. Yeah, very important. It's an issue for our community. I was wondering if clarity in the definitions we could define bedroom, because parking is tied to how many bedrooms. In the document, it defines that in the bedroom you have a window that is usable. They define the window, but they don't define specifically that. I think maybe under definitions, there might be people in the application, people room closet for call it a bedroom, so they can get extra parking. And it wouldn't hurt for clarity, in my opinion, to have per bedroom defined under definition.
Sleeping unit.
Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, you're right, Malcolm. That's a good point, because a lot of people, I mean, they're now using the Murphy beds and the sofa beds as a bedroom too. So that's it's hard to police, really hard to police, because you almost have to look at all their photos online.
Well, especially like you say, if they're leaving stuff in there, oh yeah, we've got 3 parking spots. Now there's a boat trailer and an RV in 2 of them, but
Yeah.
And that is where the issue comes, is the strata needs to be held accountable. So I don't know in our bylaws where this is probably going to be a cumbersome statement, but those stratas, the people that rent them out, just as was just mentioned, they have 2 parking spots and they have a spot for their boat. So their boat's in there, they're using the other one. And the guy shows up, he's rented this week, he's got one. Just one parking spot. And there's 3 or 4 show up with 3 or 4 vehicles. That's where the issue starts. So it needs to be clearly defined about the parking. And maybe call it bed, scope of bed, height of bed, bedroom. They're all, if this is what you have, then this is how many parking spots. They can't provide the parking spots, then they immediately lose those ones.
This, so in parking requirements, each required parking space must be located entirely on the property. And it's got number of bedrooms, number of parking stalls, dwelling unit, accessory dwelling unit in total. So there's a little graph there that for that I think is pretty clear, but unless I'm seeing it wrong.
Or do you have another comment? You just rested your elbow.
I lost my train of thought. No, I was gonna say, when it says how many off-street parking spaces does the property have? Most people in Estrada wouldn't even know what an off-street parking spot would be.
Right.
It's almost like you almost need to have an information sheet for the stratas,
Yeah. Yeah,
you know, because they're a little bit different.
Yep.
And, they're supposed to police themselves, but
Yeah,
they don't.
how to navigate the bylaw from the strata point of view. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Well, the other thing is I just found out the other day that we only have like some streets have a 48-hour maximum parking zone. You have to move your vehicle. So, you know, if you're doing Airbnb, and you're there for a week or short-term rental, and you're there for a week, it's not likely that you're gonna move your vehicle on the street, so.
Yeah.
Because there's no sign that says, I'm positive there's no sign that says, 48-hour maximum parking over in front of the Legacy, for example. I've not seen one, but I wasn't looking for one either, so I should have drove by there today to see if it actually says that.
Yeah, it fills right up on the end of Main Street on the south side but it's okay because there's no business that really needs the parking, but when it does start to develop down the road, it'll become a problem. So, yeah. I guess it would be no different than out in Old Town Bay. If you didn't have the sign there, 48 or 20, no overnight parking, it would be just full of cabin owners. And
Yeah.
people would be able to use the boat launch there.
Okay, well.
sorry,
go
one
ahead.
other real quick question. What is the purpose of asking them what platforms they're gonna advertise on?
So we can be able to have a look at them and see how many bedrooms they're advertising.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, fair enough.
All right, well, hopefully they're not like the person that was on the news the other day that rented a place for him and his wife and family to go to and got there and found out it was a tiny house that he had rented. 148 square feet. Bet his wife was not happy with him. Anyway, it looks good. Good job, guys. So is this gonna come for adoption tonight?
I think down the road, like we're still doing a little bit of engagement. Yeah. It's probably looking at implementing this in January, so.
Okay. Okay, any other comments on this matter? No, good, then we'll move on. 21-200 DP 907 Trans Canada frontage permit. So this is for discussion about a permit, and I think that Amir is either available to phone in or on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. So I guess it kind of comes to Gord and myself and on a different level than in the office. And Amir was very generous about not blaming anybody. It was just, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Amir, a bit of a misunderstanding, the way it was presented about in March about that, you know, our current bylaw states roads, curb, gutter, sewer is required, but he wasn't gonna have to do it. He was allowed to because they're changing it to frontage and our new zoning bylaws don't have curb and gutter out in that area. They're only within this district center. And so, you know, after all of this, I guess it was unaware of an application for a variance. So the reason that I wanted this brought forward was I was hoping that maybe at the Planning Development Committee meeting today, Amir had sent in all the documents that were requested except for the one roadwork one. And this was back in this room in March this year. And like I said, I'm not a developer. I missed it altogether. So it was a big miss, but we need to be a lot more clear in how we define things. And the reason I wanted to point it out today was to make people very aware that even though we may move them to what's currently in the new zoning bylaw, which isn't adopted yet, say that it's allowed, they still have to go through the variance process regardless, because we're still living with the old bylaws. Is that correct? It's mandatory that it goes through a variance just because we got a new bylaw that says let's not adopt it yet.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes. This is as part of the building permit, then because of the scale of the development, the subdivision development servicing bylaw kicks in, requires you know, certain services be provided. One of those is upgrading the road. The standard in the current subdivision development servicing bylaw requires a sidewalk, curb and gutter on that property. I believe Amar had some advice from staff that we're working on a new subdivision development servicing bylaw, and it doesn't include curb and gutter. So Amar moved forward with his plans to develop the property without curb and gutter. When we getting right down to it and what was required to move the building permit forward, then yeah, that's when he became aware that a variance would be required because that new bylaw hasn't come into effect yet.
Okay. So is there a way that could have been related to when they had the discussion about what he would be allowed to do as opposed to what the bylaw was? Like,
I don't think it's anybody's fault. Like Jeremy clearly outlined that you guys were in the process of changing it. It should have been a conversation between Jeremy and my engineers, and like in regards to the variance permit. I really don't think it's anybody's fault here. Like it's you know, my guys didn't ask about the variance permit, nor was it mentioned about the variance permit. So we just kind of went along and proceeded with whatever the new cross section is going to look like. So it's just more like what I'm hoping for is, yeah, this was a small snap and it's going to cost a little bit of time, but I just want to start moving forward with scheduling trades and stuff like that. So we've had a few different delays that have caused some of the guys that I did schedule like to take on other projects. I just kind of want to move forward and be able to tell people like, okay, I have a definite timeline. This is when you're going to be able to start and we can move forward. In regards to the cross section and the pathway, like we went ahead and we just everything that Jeremy relayed to us in the cross section photo that he sent us, the 2.5 meter pathway minus the shoulder, because there's not enough room in the roadway. We took that all into consideration and we did that. And in terms of the stormwater management, we went ahead and did that too. We just put a swale into there so that the water can filter down into the ditches along the left-hand side of the development, which is on Sherlock Road. The only reason that we didn't add ditches to the front of the property is just because between the roadway and the width, there's just not enough space there for ditches. So I think we've done everything to kind of mitigate all the parameters that would require variance permits. Is just kind of just getting those permits and moving forward with this.
So I don't think you still require a variance permit though.
Yeah, I still will, like, from my understanding from the district now is I will require a variance permit because the adoption hasn't come into place yet.
So this is just our concern. So it's not going to get today and it won't make tonight's agenda, but if it comes to the 28th meeting, you see any issues, like there's no public hearing, none of that required for this variance.
So there would be, we'd notify property owners, but yeah, there's not a hearing, but we would have to notify property owners.
Okay, so when will we do that?
That would have to occur 2 weeks prior to the meeting on the 28th.
So the district is responsible for that. That will happen 2 weeks before the meeting. So basically after the 28th, most likely, I can't say, but most likely it should get approved if he meets. You have one thing left to gather up of here. I think it's the map, the road map.
If you want to, if somebody can pull up the engineered drawings for the civil, then I think it'll be pretty much everything will show that what we're trying to do. If you guys want to run through it quickly.
Yeah, I don't think we have access to it at this moment, just the room we're in, but yeah, so I mean, the next step would be, a servicing agreement for all the offsite works, and then have our engineer review them, opinion of probable cost, that's typically prepared by the developer's engineer, and then a security deposit. So kind of those things would still need to happen.
So I have a question. Why am I being asked for a security deposit? Is that typical amongst the district of Sicamous? Because it's the first time, like within other municipalities that I've worked in, I've never been asked for a security deposit for the offsite works. And I also did check with my engineer and my architect. They work in Kelowna and Vernon a lot. And there's usually not a deposit that's required unless we're saying to do the work after the development's built. Typically, I'm agreeing to the servicing work and I'm going to do it. It's a part of all of my quotes that I'm receiving for civil works and all of that kind of stuff. And I anticipate that it's going to be done concurrently with the project. So normally, like a municipality wouldn't issue me a final occupancy permit until the offsite works were complete.
So I think most municipalities, any offsite works, you're required to provide that security. Some municipalities do the work and you provide the security, or you're paying for the work first and then the municipality does the work. In this case, you probably provide the security, you complete the work and then you get that security back. And the idea is once you have your building permit, you're allowed to proceed. And then that work is completed and you get it back. I don't know another way to do it. I think most municipalities do it that way.
Most municipalities, if the municipality is going to do the work, then yes, they take 120% of the budget. So this one's 125, but then they're going to go ahead and do the work. But in the event that the developer is going to go and do the work, then we do it along with the inspections that proceed with in the development of the project. Then when it comes time for final occupancy permit, then like if the offsite works isn't completed, I'll give you one example. I did a 3-lot subdivision in Queensboro. The offsite works weren't completed by the time of final occupancy. It was at that time that I had to provide the estimates and give 120% deposit for the offsite works. But in turn, I got my final occupancy permit and the city held the money until I completed the offsite works and then they refunded it to me. So just as like a development standpoint, like the offsite works is going to be about in like my capital budget and what I'm spending in my own cash into the project is an additional 20% that I'm gonna give to the district to hold. So instead of me giving it to the district to just hold, like why wouldn't I just give it to the district and the district does the work?
Yeah, I can check with our operations department and see what they're comfortable with. But the district just doesn't have the capacity to do the work. Like, you know, the district sickness doesn't really do that kind of work. We always contract it out, so either we'd be hiring a contractor or you would be hiring a contractor, and it's usually better if you hire the contractor, your engineer oversees it, does all the sign offs, and then, you know, essentially.
And that's a way that I want to proceed, right? Because the project, the drawings that I'm sending out for bid are all including the entirety of the work, the fire hydrants, light posts, the pathway, the swale, all of that kind of stuff. So, but like now, in a sense, I'm double paying. So not only am I getting the district to hold the money, I'm paying the contractors and having to put that money into the development, only to get it back at the end. Landscaping, I understand it's different because, you know, if I don't water the trees and that kind of stuff, there's could be a lot of stuff that dies within the property, and that's normal amongst municipalities. Like the only time that I've seen like large amounts of off-site works deposits being held are like on really large developments where you're talking like you got 100 townhouse units, or you have 150 condo units or something like that going up. Like in a development like this, that's 4 CRUs and a unit above. This is like, it's a considerable amount of money that has to go out of my pocket into the district just to hold it for the work that I'm already going to do. Like what I would much rather is you hold my final occupancy permit hostage. Like I can't move into the unit. I can't do any work within it once it's built unless the offsite works is done.
Yeah, I can talk to operations about it. See what they accept.
Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, through the chair, this is, I get this question all the time from developers, and they always say, well, why can't the district hold back the occupancy permit or the business license if they run in a business until all the offsite works are done? And it's the same thing with the DCC, you know. It's so difficult for a developer to put this kind of money out to build a development like this. And he's got so much going on with trades and the district and trying to get all in the bank and trying to make all ends meet, where it could be so easy where like, if it's a business like this, that, yeah, you don't get the occupancy permit until, you know, your DCCs are paid up and DCCs, I mean, we don't use the DCCs right away anyways. They could be paid up at the time of the building permit. And the same goes for the off-street stuff. And whether you're building a condominium where a developer has to have so many pre-sales before he can even start to do a development. There's no developer that starts without pre-sales. And he gets his pre-sales, but he has to give all that money up for DCC, so he has no money to build. So why can't DCCs, once the unit's sold, one unit sold, you know, $12,000 per door goes to the district. You know, the district doesn't use the DCC money right away. It's all gets used afterwards, you know, and it kills developers to try to do business that way. It really does.
There is a tool, and it has been discussed. We can actually defer the DCCs for 3 years. They can make installments over 3 years. So is there no tool in our toolbox for the offsite works as well to do a similar thing with?
I would want to talk to Daryl and Jeremy about it.
I wouldn't say, just from personal experience, I wouldn't say if you're going to do a development and defer it for 3 years, I think there's like a threshold to when a developer's liable for the complex that he's built. I don't know exactly what the rules are against a strata, but I think it's like a 2 year that he has to have the company open for subrogation against. So like 3 years might be stretching it, but like in a development like this, like all I'm asking for is, you know, if I don't do the offsite works, we can have a different discussion of it, but you know, I'm happy to sign something that we won't you guys won't give us occupancy permit until the all the works are done, because at the end of it, like, if the offsite works, say, are $100,000, I'm only having to put like 35% of that out of my pocket, right? Versus now to the district, like, because I get financing on the 65%, so instead of that 35,000 for the offsite works, I'm paying 135. So that's it's a considerable amount of difference, right?
Yeah, well, why don't we leave it with staff to check into so that we can have an answer for this?
Yeah.
Before the 28th of September. Go ahead, Gordon.
Just on a note that this is now, almost September, and then we're talking the end of September, that he's gonna have approval, then he's gonna have to find contractors at the end of September. Now this isn't something like he's selling, he can add on to the price of to the end user. This is something that he's budgeted for, gone for finance for, and then if he starts to have to build in the wintertime, then your costs go up again, as Brian would probably know.
Yeah.
If we have to have an emergency meeting to get this project going, wouldn't it be wise for us to see if, staff could do that?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
The district does have the hammer as far as the occupancy permit and the business license. I tend to agree, like the landscaping is a different beast altogether, but that's such a small part of it, right? So yeah, and I agree, like it's ROI, like he's not building something that he's gonna sell somebody else. He's building a business that needs to get up and running, and if there's a way to get these guys going, that's what this committee is all about, is moving stuff forward, and yeah, I would definitely think that that there's a lot of people that say, we have foundations that have been started and not finished. I really can't see this as the same, even close to the same thing.
No.
It's a respected business person from that we know, and everything has been done really well. It's you shouldn't have the same level of risk with this contractor.
So I would suggest that staff has a discussion regarding the idea of the occupancy permit tied to the offsite works, which I agree with, because the biggest complaint that happened when we started going through this whole OCP and zoning bylaws was the developer said is that, it's not the development that hurts us. It's the costs that get added on by the community that hurt us, the upfront costs, because you got to finance that. And there's none of those costs, as Gordon said, like the DCCs might not get used for 2 or 3 years. If that, we got DCCs that are 25 years old. So it seems a bit hardship on somebody who wants to do something to actually have to put up the money and up 125%, and then actually having a finance line item that they're paying for and sure they get their money back, but still in the big picture, it's still part of a cost. I do have one other question, because in the whole conversation around this recently over the last week or so, it came to our attention that they had to, one of the delays, the biggest delay was having to do a traffic study. So the traffic study, that request was put to MOTI naturally, and then the district of Sycamore said, my understanding is that MOTI said that a traffic study was not required. Is that correct?
So Ministry of Transportation doesn't have any approval authority, under a certain threshold. So
4,500 square feet or something.
so the advice from Ministry of Transportation is we don't require it.
So
We
why
can't require it.
why did the district opt to do it or request it?
I think because we wanted to make sure that people entering that property are going to be safe and be safe for other vehicles, and look at the impact on the adjacent roads to determine if offsite commercial required, kind of like the development on Main Street where, we want to be sure that, our roads aren't going to be negatively affected, because if they are, it's then on the district to improve them. So this developer, maybe he creates a development that, all of a sudden the district has to put $500,000 into traffic upgrades. And I don't think that'd be fair to the rest of the community.
Well, that intersection's already bad because the stop sign's coming out of a business. And it's a three-way stop with the highway having unlimited and unrestricted access on and off, which is in itself confusing, which is not, this is down the street from that. Also, there was one other comment about a request of having a pathway, which they don't have an issue with having a pathway there, but to extend the pathway to in front of the Chevron, which is not, it's a different piece of property. Why would we request them to do the offsite works of pathway on somebody else's property?
Right. So in a typical process, then the developer, creates an opinion of cost, right? It's going to cost $100,000 to develop the property as it is. They come to the council for a request to get some relief from that. So, and then a council would look at it and say, okay, we'll give you that relief, but in return, we want something else. I think would make a lot of sense for this council when they look at that variance to look at, not only this unit, but the unit next door, and maybe the unit next door, and say, does the pathway work all the way across? At what point and how can the district get any benefit from that? And that's at the variance. So yeah, that was the advice I gave Amar was, what can you give the district in return for the variance? You're getting relief. What can you give in return?
But not to get into a big debate here, but this committee basically suggested some time ago, and the OCP has no curb and gutter anywhere except in the downtown core. So we're given a variance which is going to meet the future zoning bylaws, which, my God, they should have been passed 2 years ago. Still are not passed. So I disagree with the philosophy of going, well, we need something in trade-off for a variance that should have already been in place. Because the new zoning bylaws should be adopted by now. And same as the H4 trailer court, and the same as a lot of things, like the same as our short-term rentals. Like there's a lot of stuff that's delaying getting done. The zoning bylaws, which affects the costs of people, and then we turn around because it's our issue and want to go, well, can we get something for nothing? So I don't agree with that, but that's up to council. Go ahead.
I've got a comment related to what Jeff is saying, but before I go there, are we talking, coming back to what Gord was saying, doing something to try and expedite this for him in terms of, you're directing staff to have a meeting, but are we recommending that we have an emergency meeting or something that expedites this for him so he's not waiting on us for something that we should have had ready for him in the first place?
Well, my suggestion is that Amir is looking for a date that he's going to be able to start work.
Yeah.
And so I would suggest that we allow, well, he's looking for a date so he can arrange his trades. That's going to take some time in itself. So my comment would be is that the staff and maybe Gord and myself work together to ensure that on the 28th, when it comes, it's going to meet all the requirements that are going to be required so that we can say, not emphatically, but most likely the 28th would be a day that you would get a favorable vote for your variance, because it's already all in our new zoning bylaws, which that's what we've always said we want to try to work towards. So the mobile home park and the this and that, everything we've done to date has always said, let's move towards the new zoning bylaw, which means we have to do a variance for the old side of the zoning bylaw. So if that's possible, we just have to make sure that all the documents are in, and that by 2 weeks before we're able to do the notifications.
So to be clear, that this has nothing to do with the zoning bylaw at all. Nothing. The existing official meeting plan has what standards that's required on Trans-Canada frontage road. And the subdivision development servicing bylaw has that standard for gutter. So the idea would be the new subdivision development servicing bylaw is proposing no curb and gutter, so we'd have to also amend the official community plan to say no curb and gutter. I think a lot of this ties into the active transportation network plan as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, we want Amar to be able to move forward as quickly as possible, but what we need to see from him is a road cross section. So know what the RD3 cross section, we need to see the alternate prepared by an engineer. We need to see a servicing agreement prepared by an engineer, and we need to see a opinion of probable cost prepared by an engineer. We need to see all that before we can even determine what it is. Likely a variance is going to be required, so likely it's going to have to come to council. I don't know the timing of things, but you know, it's going to take a lot of time and effort on both Amar's part, his engineer's part, and our part to get something in front of council. So we work towards that. We want to work towards that. And I think, you know, this committee, I'm saying this with all due respect, this committee doesn't actually direct staff to do things. This committee offers advice to council, and then council then directs staff. So I understand what you're saying, and I think it's important that we work towards those same goals. But this is more of a technical process than it is a philosophical process, and staff wants to work with Amar. We want to see this development go forward, and we're committed to that and doing what we can as staff, and we really don't need a lot of direction from this committee to do that. I think the issues that have been brought up are very important, and I wrote them down. And yeah, you know, is there an opportunity to defer some costs? Is there an opportunity to make things better for developers? You know, I've written those down. I think we'll work towards it. But at the same time, you know, it's a technical process that we need to work through.
So that's why I said if staff could do the work with the mayor to make sure that it's all completed before the 14 days prior to the 28th. That it can come to council, and probably this meeting format before council for a recommendation, because I think we already recommended this project to move forward back in March. I don't remember. Go ahead, Gord.
I got a question. The servicing agreement and the opinion of probable cost. What's the point in me doing that now? I'm paying an engineer $1,500 or $2,000 if there's going to be changes to it that come up in the future. I have no problem with the servicing, but if there's going to be another meeting and there's going to be additional changes and all of that kind of stuff, why do I need to submit that before the variance? Can we not get an approval of concept and then I go to him and I got to pay the guy one time instead of twice? And then the other thing is the road cross section. Like you want a drawing, great, I'll get you the drawing. But like the drawing that was sent to us by Jeremy pretty much gives you exactly what's going to be there, minus a shoulder, minus a reduced pathway. The only difference is a swale that catches the water. So if that drawing is imperative, I'll get it for you. But really, you have the concept. And in the civil engineering drawings, you can see exactly the water pathway. You can see the pathway. You can see all of the things that you're looking for. It's just, you know, if that's an I and T that I have to dot and cross, sure, I'll go ahead and do it. But like, you have the information. Like, there's nothing crazy that we're asking for here or some sort of crazy variance. We're just taking what the new bylaw is gonna be and just implementing it now.
I guess the need for the drawing is that, you know, we have to be able to show the public that what we're going from the RD3 and what we're going to, which right now it's the RD3 cross section, you know, with some additions and subtractions. But you need to see that drawing and construct it. You know, that drawing is going to have to exist. So.
And is it fair to, like, for the public, are they already, you know, to show that we're going to go from curbs and gutters to RD3? I'm not saying the public's going to come back and have any complaints about it, but are you also going to include the fact that this is going to be the way of the future anyways. So like, it's not like a massive change that we're doing. We're just, you know, explain that to the public that this is the zoning bylaw that we're gonna adopt anyway.
So you're gonna, the drawing is gonna have to exist for council to approve it. So that's gonna have to happen. Again, if you choose to delay the servicing agreement and the opinion of probable cost, then you'd be choosing to delay the project. So that's okay with me.
Yeah.
But if you're waiting for the meeting on the 28th, then you're starting, that's when the clock starts, I guess, for you after the 28th.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Deb.
Yeah, so the second part of what I was going to say before is recognizing that this has to do with not just new bylaw, old bylaw, there's some other things tied in there. But back to Amar's point that this is what we've got, this is where we're going. Is it possible? You know, it's a little bit like what we're looking at next with this. We were asking as a committee to get something in terms of in front of the developer that we can say, okay, this is what we want. And, you know, like, even though we're here right now, this is where we're going. You're going to have to go through this process if the bylaw isn't enacted before you do this. So, you know, like, give them a one-pager right up front that says, you might have to jump through this extra hoop, and this is what we need for it. Just, I don't know, just something that makes it a little bit easier for them to understand what it is they need to do, because I get what he's saying. You know, if somebody told me, well, this is, you know, where we're going is what we're asking you for, and that's what I would start building towards. I wouldn't be thinking about what hoops I had to jump through to deal with what was. I don't know if I made any sense there, but it's just.
And Scott did send an email that outlined the cross section, so I'm not going to say that it wasn't brought to my attention. And he gave the urban cross section within that development bylaw email. But and when this got brought up like just a week or so ago, that I was pissed off because it wasn't done properly. From when I had the conversation with Scott, because my direction to all of my engineers was, hey, talk to the district, give them what they want. Time is more important to me. So they did that, and then when I found out that it was curbs and gutters and that kind of stuff, and that's my mistake for not looking through it in full detail. Like I went to my engineer and I'm like, hey, what the hell? You were supposed to put curbs and gutters here, and he's like, wait a second. He's like, I don't understand. Let me familiarize myself. And then he came back to me with emails and saying, hey, listen, we've already had this discussion. This is a reason that we proposed this. So that's kind of where everything came from. So I do believe it was there. I guess I'll take the blame for that. It was my fault not to look at the urban cross section and say, hey, listen, like, this is an extra hoop that we're going to have to jump through. I thought all the servicing, all the civil works and everything was taken care of at that time.
But as the conversation that I had with you, Vera, I said that because we're dealing with an old zoning bylaw, there is no option but to have a variance for it. So to do the variance, you have to prepare the paperwork that shows what you're varying from what exists today. So, and that's what Scott's referring to, the document that the public can have a look at. There's no public hearing for this, but it still has to be in the notification that they send out that there needs to be, oh, well, this is what the current zone is and the variance is for this. But a long time ago, it was decided in the community when Gordon and I worked together with Daryl and Jeremy on the subdivision service and bylaw that we don't want, and the staff does not want, curb and gutter, because it's just curb and gutter and sidewalk is a lot of extra work for staff in areas that, you know, like the tree streets and every place else in town. Downtown core and Riverside is a different situation, but the rest of the community, it's perfectly fine to not have curb and gutter because it is a more onerous on staff to do snow removal. Go ahead, Gord.
Yes, through the chair. Yes, Scott, we're not trying to tell you what to do. You got to remember that we approved this in March and it should have went to council. And then they were, and whether they were led down the garden path or whatever happened, he was told by Jeremy that, you know, a side, not a sidewalk, curb and gutter aren't needed. We're going to the new bylaw. So, you know, here we are in the fall. He's already sent all those trades onto the next project. Now he's got to find, regroup them all again by the end of September or maybe October. And then he's in the wintertime and he's building in the wintertime. He can't recoup any of these costs because he's not selling any of these units. There's nothing to sell. You know, it's just, all we're asking is there any way to speed up the process? Because he's kind of waited since March or May, whatever it was. And we're not trying to tell you how to do your job at all. We're just trying to speed it up is all we're trying to do. And I mean, the cross section that Jeremy sent them, it's a pretty nice cross section to me. All you got to do is change the dimensions. And it's pretty much meets the criteria is what they're going to build. That's all we're trying to do is speed up the process. So they're not building in the wintertime because they already had the trades all lined up. And this is not good for development.
But you have to realize that there's a step for the variance that got missed. And Amir's not pointing fingers. I don't think we should point any fingers. And just we got mixed. We should just ask staff if it's at all possible to make sure that this comes back for the 28th and that everything that's required will be included. So if we can do that, then that's the best we can hope for. So Amir, the ball is, as was stated, in your court to provide a cross-section drawing.
Yeah.
And then from that, we can move this forward.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and I'd like to thank you for your guys' time.
Thanks. So I see a bunch of people here. So when's the regular council meeting starting? Can we have? Well, we got the mobile home park. So the last thing that I added, we can leave off, but the mobile home park, the reason I asked for Parks View was I think Parks View is R2 small parcel residential. Is that what Parks View is zoned?
Well, I provided the table that shows all the setbacks
Yeah.
in Parksville, so Parksville is the R2.
So in Parksville, you have a side setback of 1.5 meters and exterior side 4 meters, rear 5, front 4. And I thought when we went through this whole discussion about setbacks for the H4 or R4, that's what we're gonna try and do. Yet on the drawing, we see accessory building setbacks 6 meters. 6 meters on everything. We don't have the 4 meters in here. Is that? I thought we discussed that we were gonna make the R4 the same as the R2.
So the new R4 would be the MHP 1. And so we have the setbacks kind of from the park boundaries. And then we have the setbacks from the interior parcel lines. And so I think we have captured all where we want them. The sides would be 1.2 meters. We still have the rear is 6 meters, which is a little bit larger than the R2, but I think we tried to capture everything we talked about in this table.
Okay. Well, I like I said, I just thought that when I saw this drawing, it was not, I thought that we had talked about 4 meters in between those, because I knew that it was 1.2 for the R2, so which is lesser than. Anyway, it looks like we'll have to adjourn this and.
We have 5 meters from other structures in the new zone.
Is it 5? Everything on there says 6.
This is for the existing zone.
Okay. Sorry. The new zoning is 5 meters, or is it?
5.
All right, well. So we didn't get to one item. If we could add that item to the next one. Or just for discussion. So adjournment. I don't even have the piece of paper. So I'd like to adjourn the Planning and Development Committee meeting, August 24th, the adjournment time being 2:01. All in favor? We're adjourned. Thanks. Sorry.